Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Offshore Diaries. I'm Melissa, Paulo's virtual assistant or VA, and also your host for this podcast. Today, we're doing a special episode where Paulo and I interview each other, and we're going to kind of walk you through how this podcast started. So, you may have seen Paulo in the first episode. They did a recording in New Jersey. He'll be talking a bit more about himself here. So, welcome to the podcast, Paulo, our podcast.
Happy to finally get this thing off the ground. We've been talking about it enough, so looking forward to making this thing happen.
Yeah, so why don't you tell everyone about a bit about your background and eventually
Sure.
how we met?
So I am, for people who are wondering, I am Filipino, and you could probably guess I'm not living in the Philippines. I do live in New Jersey, lived in America since I was 3 years old. Been back to the Philippines multiple times. Background in computer science, mathematics, and business overall, including some things in real estate and marketing and different things like that. Over the past few years, ever since COVID had happened, there's been a real shift in the things that I've been doing. And it's been a lot of mentoring and other things like that for other people. Sometime, I'll say maybe early 2024, my partner and I, my business partner lives down in Florida. We've worked together on various companies and other projects for about 15 years now. He and I came up with this concept of what we ended up calling the Yes Master class. Over a period of time, I'll say since he and I have connected, he was actually training a lot of our sales teams and our sales teams in the Philippines and locally here in the US. And we really acknowledged the fact that we had great people working for us in the Philippines in sales, but we spent so much time having to train them out of what they thought were sales and what we thought were sales. And some of that is basically things like, if you're given a book and a binder of scripts and you can't deviate at all, is that sales? Right? We really believe that sales was something was that was heavily reliant on a person's gut, how the conversation is flowing, how the conversations are going, and being able to adjust on the fly was necessary for a salesman to be good. We also thought that sales was a path for Filipinos specifically to increase their income and have real big revenue with no cap, zero ceilings, and the ability to really grow their revenue thresholds. We just didn't think there was actually any training legitimately for it for the Filipino community. And based on all the people we've had working for us in the Philippines, in Manila, Cebu, Baguio, Bohol, none of them really had a hardcore sales training background. So we wanted to develop something called the Yes Master class, which was really for hardcore sales, the way we thought sales should be done, very similar to how we're trained here in the US as salespeople. I'm not a salesperson, unfortunately, but my business partner is. So he was actually the one leading that charge.
Yeah, so that's the background of that. For my friends who are watching and who probably are wondering how did Paula and I cross paths, let me introduce myself real quickly and how I ended up in the Yes Master class. So my name is Melissa. I have a background in development communication from the University of the Philippines. So for people who don't know what that degree program is, it's basically journalism, science communication, education all rolled into one, and with like a strong advocacy for social issues. So I'm actively volunteering in a lot of NGOs, like for climate, mental health, and that kind of shapes who I am. I might not always be working in the development sector, but I that kind of shapes my worldview, and that's something I bring wherever I go, including in the Yes Master class. Earlier last year, I was scrolling through the internet and I was following like several pages, and one of the pages that I was following was promoting the Yes Master class, and I was like, sales is kind of outside of my comfort zone, but it was something I wanted to learn just because I had this strong aversion to it. Like I had all these misconceptions, I guess, or biases, and I felt like for those who know me, I'm very introverted. So I was like, you know what? I have the time. Why not give this a try? And I signed up. I was part of the second batch of students, and that's how Paula and I met.
Yep.
So, time for the interesting question. I'm looking forward to this very much. You've had VAs from the Philippines in the past, but you didn't exactly start a podcast with them.
Right.
So, what made this interaction different?
Well, when you say VAs, it's such a broad term. I've had different people in the past that have done various tasks in the Philippines. I've ran teams of developers in the Philippines. I've had data entry people in the Philippines, and I'm talking about the course of the past 25 years, right? We've had call centers in the Philippines. We've had sales teams in the Philippines, and then obviously I've had my own administrative assistants in the Philippines, brought on for client-based work specifically from the Philippines. Over the past year, the past 20 years of doing this in the Philippines, the industry has changed a lot. Um, the term VA, I'm not even sure when it started becoming called a VA, and I'm not even sure a VA knows if they're a VA or if they're a programmer, or if they're just a remote worker, or if they're an at-home worker. The term VA just became such a generic term.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
So, I mean, it's yes, I've had lots of experiences and I've had a lot of quote unquote VAs working. I'm not sure they would have all defined themselves as VAs, but I think it was our conversations about this specifically about, what is a VA and how does that look in the Philippines that really spurred this conversation rolling into what became a podcast now, right? And that was really coming from those Reddit posts that you were discussing. And it's really interesting when you talk about what a VA is because no one really gives a good definition about it. Now, the other reason why this really evolved into what it is today is because I went back to the Philippines a few months ago, actually. And strangely enough, even though you and I have had such different virtual interactions, meeting in person is a whole different universe. And then we met some other team members while we were there. And for the most part, I've never met my other VAs before
Right,
in
right.
person. It's a different universe. But then we could really talk about more about, okay, these are how VAs are living their lives outside of the work life that we
Hmm.
see with them. They are real people. There are real conversations to be had. But I also acknowledge that me specifically, just because I was born in the Philippines, I very much raised American.
Hmm.
And I am a client for you VAs. I am somebody who hires you guys directly. I also have many friends and other colleagues here in the US that are business owners that hire VAs. I have friends who own agencies here in the Philippines, hundreds of VAs working for them, right? As we interacted more and talked more, even with other people that we worked with, I think we both acknowledge that the communications that people are having online on Reddit and other such forums, they don't really have directly to their clients or to their managers at VA agencies and vice versa. Right. And I think
Definitely, yeah.
this is really where that's been evolving to that because of a recent trip that I had, conversations you and I have had, and just the way the VA industry has been evolving over the past few years, I think the time is right and it's necessary to have better conversations about the industry. So this makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, I agree completely. I actually recall one of the very first conversations we've had, like when we started working together, and it was like we'd be on meetings and I would be very hesitant to say anything, but like after the
Yeah.
meetings, I'd send you like these really long emails, like with all my thoughts about it. I think a huge part of it is din, actually, sobrang tempted ako mag-Tagalog. Pwede nga pala, no? Um, sorry,
Just to be clear to
yeah.
everybody, I do understand Tagalog. I just do not speak it well at all. So I'll save you guys the torture of speaking it, but I do understand. So you can Tagalog all you want.
Yeah, I have a free pass for Tagalog words here. Anyway, so when I sent you these really long emails with all my thoughts about it, I it's coming from a strong desire of also to explain life in the Philippines and explain things from the VA side because as an advocate, like that's part of who I am. And yeah, so that was a very interesting shift in our dynamics when you told me, just don't send me these long emails. Just talk to me real time when it matters, when someone is still around to hear it, right? And that took a bit of courage, but that also created this kind of openness around us. I also
Yeah.
noticed like people from America, like working with Americans, they enjoy small talk a bit, like "Hi, how are you?" And when people answer that question honestly, that's a way for the conversation to take a very deep take. Like, "Oh, I was stuck
Right.
in Manila traffic." Oh, like
Right.
this is what's going on in our local politics. All of those things. They were very interesting conversation starters. I think at one point you mentioned Reddit, right? At one point our discussions were so dynamic and so interesting. I felt like, it's you should be immersed in it a bit more, especially because you have so much curiosity and care for Filipinos, right?
Before we go there, how did you even get to Reddit to begin with? Like, what brought you there with these kinds of
Okay.
conversations? Why were you even scrolling through Reddit for VA stuff?
For VA stuff. I well, in the Philippines has a very unique social media culture. At some point we were called the social media capital of the world. We use social media for everything, and for everything, I mean everything, like rentals, food recipes, jobs. And I was on Reddit actually because the VA industry can be so lonely. The freelancing industry in general. Like a lot of people, like I've mentioned in my About Me section, a lot of people get their first freelancing gig or racket, as they call it here, from Facebook posts, like from people just offloading short tasks like article writing and stuff. I ended up in Reddit because that's actually what comes up first when you type writing jobs near me, work from home, and then when you type in the word VA, a lot of Reddit results come up, and that's how you kind of get sucked into this community. Because the VA industry is unregulated and so broad, you just end up with this interesting mismatch of people who are just like working from home, and you get good advice there and bad advice, and it's this whole community. So I'm a big fan of communities, and I have a lot of friends who are currently working as VAs. They're engineers, doctors, lawyers that somehow found their way into the offshoring industry. By the way, that's why we're calling it the Offshore Diaries. For those who are wondering about the title, offshoring because it's a general and accepted term, I guess, for anything that's
Yeah.
remote work. Like, yeah, when you're working
It's
for
funny.
foreign
It
clients.
used to be called outsourcing, right? In the US, it was outsourcing, right? We outsourced the work. I guess it was just different because you technically outsource work everywhere. Offshoring shows the distance, right? It's going to be in a different shore of the world that's going to be taking on that project. So it's interesting how it's evolved.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess did I answer the question?
Yeah, but hold on, but Reddit is so funky to me, and I agree with you. The social media, Facebook, Instagrams, things like that is different than Reddit, right? Facebook's and Instagram, Snaps, like those are profiles attached to those individuals for the most part. Whether they're fake or not doesn't really matter. Reddit is completely anonymous.
Yeah.
Right? Reddit is completely anonymous, and I'm gonna burst a few bubbles for you VAs out there who think that nobody sees your posts. Employers, clients, VA agency owners, we scroll and we troll these Reddit subreddits as well, that you're ranting about your clients, ranting about your work, complaining about your salaries, complaining about taxes. We're listening, or sorry, I'm not saying about, we're reading through it. Whether or not we're listening, we care. I don't know how everybody reacts to it, but everyone's on there, right? And I think I bring that up because I think Reddit is such a different world than traditional social media because everything's anonymous, right?
And it's also, wait, let me just like interject a bit there. It's also one of those platforms that aren't focused on visuals. Like people aren't really trying to sell you stuff there. You don't have to worry about aesthetics. There, it's like the content of what you're saying matters.
Right.
And you get more upvotes, you get more engagements if it's like really authentic, if it's real, if it's dramatic, just a bit.
Right. But the reality is though, if you're going to say something so bold anonymously in just text form, would you ever say that directly to your client? Would you have that conversation directly with your managers? Right. And I think that's where, when you and I first looked at these Reddits together, when you had passed it on to me and say, look at this, and I ended up doom scrolling for like 10 hours, sending you posts that I thought were really cool.
Although, by the way, 1 second before we get to that part, I kind of just want to continue that thought on why I sent it to you in the first place. At some point, I felt like, guys, kailangan ko ng tulong. Hindi pwede sa akin galing lahat ng mga kwento na to. Because I feel like you and I were disagreeing a lot. We were interrupting each other a lot. And it was just like, you have to hear this from someone else. This is not just my opinion. I swear, there are other people with the same struggle. So that's how I kind of got dragged into this rabbit hole.
But I think a lot of things that I've acknowledged when we've gone through all these posts is the number one thing that's missing is communications. I feel like half, if not most, of all of those challenges that people are having with their clients or with their managers or with different agencies is the communication is lacking from the VA to them and back. Right now, there's probably reasons why the communication is lacking, and from the VA towards their managers and towards their clients, I think a lot of that is just a cultural challenge that I don't think has to be that way. I think things can be overcome and things can be changed. And this podcast is going to give a voice to those people who never were able to speak directly to them. You'll see in the first episode there was a cut there that I was talking about. Most of the people, UVAs who are working in the Philippines, and you're working for American clients, you're probably dealing with a 45 to 65-year-old white man, right?
Mm-hmm.
White male who is interacting with a Filipino for the first time, and you're interacting with them for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Philippines has this thing where oh, he's American, he's white. Okay, let's call him sir. Let's make sure I don't stutter. Make sure I speak English correctly. I don't want to be embarrassed. And because of it, you stop saying things that you wish you could say. Right?
Oh my God.
And
Yeah. Okay.
right. Let's use this platform. If you can't say that directly to your clients or to your boss, say it to Melissa. Say it to me. And let me respond as a client would, or at least as I would, on behalf of the clients. And if we have other clients and other agency owners on, as we will, let us respond to them, to you guys, as if we were them and your own bosses, as your own agency owners, as your own managers. We have some expertise here, and I wish and as much as Melissa is advocating for the VA side of things, I wish you could understand, Manila traffic more. I wish you could understand, all the challenges we have in our lives. I wish you could understand what it's like to have to work the graveyard shift every single day. And basically, start working when the sun goes down and go to sleep when the sun comes up. I get it, but I don't, right? I understand, but I don't live it. At the same time, there's challenges we're facing here on
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
side of the business. And I don't think you're hearing that either, right? And I think hearing this conversation and having these talks back and forth is really going to be this podcast. It's really what's going to make this podcast stand out, because we do absolutely need your voices to be heard as these conversations go on.
Yeah, I kind of want to take like a quick break to just say thank you to everyone who upvoted my Reddit post when I was like sharing that we were so inspired by all the discussions in Reddit and that we're actually going to create a podcast out of this. I also want to acknowledge my privilege to be in this unique dynamic where my client actually cares about what I think and how I feel, and instead of worrying whether I'm going to lose my opportunity to work, I'm actually encouraged to share and
Yeah.
speak freely. I know that not everyone has that opportunity.
And I do think I'm in a unique situation where I happen to be from the Philippines. I've gone back numerous times. I've had people working there. I still have family there. Um, and I'm heavily involved in a lot of the other things going on there. So I do want to see my fellow Filipinos succeed. I don't think saying things into the world, into the internet, into that web anonymously is going to create positive change without having actual communications where it has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
if we
kind
could
of wait.
provide them,
Yeah,
yeah,
not to cut you off. I just kind of want to circle back on what you said earlier about would you have the courage to say this to your boss or to your client
right,
face to face, right? I think that's a very important thing, not just to have the courage to say things out loud, but also to hear what they're gonna say if they're gonna speak back to you and see them like as this complete person. Because after hearing your interviews with people like Jean and Teo, a lot of the opinions that I've had like really strongly and were reinforced by other VAs who lived in that Reddit echo chamber, like so it's like things about salary and expectations and all of that. When you only hear one side of the equation and you don't really care enough to listen to the other side, you have like this imbalanced view, and that really changes through honest and open conversations where you actually see who you're talking to. You
right,
see that they're human, right? So
right.
just wanted to
What
agree with that.
and to think about this, right? Those two gentlemen we were talking about in the first episode, they're agency owners who are American-based owners who have offices in the Philippines with teams and teams of people in the Philippines. They are going out of their way to accommodate and to work for their employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've fallen in love with many of the Philippine culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? They go
Yeah.
back often. They really have a passion for the people. Some of the things I could talk to you about that Gene does for his employees is off the charts. I don't know if I could do the things that he does for his employees, to be honest with you. But they've grown a general care. And I think when you have people that actually care about their employees, it's important that the employees also care about their employers, right?
Right.
You should care about who you work for. You should care about what you're doing. You should care about what company and what they're selling or what products they're providing because you want to be part of it, right? That's the only way to build a real culture in a company is to have the care happen both ways. And if it's all about the money, okay, I get it. It's a job, but it's certainly not a career and it's certainly not a lifestyle. And if that's okay with you, that's okay with you. But I don't think most people find happiness in doing work for other people that they don't care about.
Yeah, and just gonna interject real quick, and Paula, you're gonna hate me for this. But one of the perspectives I bring onto this podcast often is like the concept of power imbalance and
Yeah.
systemic change. And I know you're so tired of hearing it, but just for our listeners, those are things that I'm gonna bring up from time to time as well to have like a different perspective on things. And speaking of perspective, I think one of the things I love so much about our interactions, and I'm also kind of hoping that we create in this podcast is this is not necessarily to change people's opinions. Like I don't
Yep.
talk to you with the goal of changing your opinions. And
Yep.
when you talk to me, you know that the opinions I have, they don't change completely either. But
Right.
just a shift, like to add a bit more nuance to things, to
Yep.
to help people think about things. That's absolutely the goal on my end. And
Just to understand, right? We just have to
mhm,
understand each other. We don't have to agree, but you have to understand where each other's coming from. And
exactly.
I think that's why having just a Reddit post and a Reddit subreddit and these threads without having the other sides involved in the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
it's just people supporting each other. Well, kind of supporting each other. I've seen some posts where other VAs are completely just arguing and disagreeing with each other. But for the
Yeah,
most part,
yeah, definitely.
we want to hear all the sides to a story, right? There's a conversation, but we need to hear everything to make it a complete conversation. So, you know, I think we've had a lot of fun with the Reddits and a lot of fun in how
Mhm.
this has really evolved. Um, what's your goals here? What are you gonna do with this podcast? What are some of the things you're looking forward to in getting out of this?
I'm looking forward to having like well, for one, we've always talked about how broad the VA industry is, right? So I'm really curious in all the different niches, all the different specialized VAs that are out there, because I know there are quite a few, like all the way from
Yeah,
programming to marketing to personal assistants to everything else. I'm also really curious how people end up in this industry,
yeah,
because there are lots of stories about how people from all sorts of professions decided, okay, you know what, I just want to work from home. I want to try something completely
right.
different. So I'm interested in the variety of people and the stories they're gonna bring. What about you? What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking to find out the things that I didn't even know I had to know, to be honest with you. 20 something years of having hired Filipinos do different tasks and projects. And every day I'm learning more about the things that I didn't even think needed to be known, right? But I also think there's a real conversation here to be had that's going to lead to something bigger,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, if the other VAs can chime in and speak up, and the agencies can speak up, and the clients can speak up, we can create a real one. I would love to create a real definition of what a
Mm-hmm.
VA is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we could probably accomplish a better way to do everything in this industry. You hear clients talking about ghosting. You hear VAs talking about ghosting on both
Mm-hmm.
sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You hear VAs saying all the clients are lowballing, and then you hear VAs saying, if you're not going to do it for $4 an hour, I'll do it for $4 an hour.
Yeah,
In fact,
exactly.
you'll do it for four, I'll do it for three. So
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
there's a
Or I'll
lot
do it
of
for free.
that. I'll do it for
Uh-huh.
free.
I'll do it for
Right,
the experience. Like there's a
right,
lot of
right. So who's right and who's wrong, right?
Mm.
But if we can clarify some definitions, I think that's the starting point of how we kind of look at, okay, you're a VA, okay, you're a remote worker, okay, you're just a foreign employee, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What does that all mean? Next thing is going to be, okay, you should be making this much, you should be making that much. Are you making minimum wage? Do you live in Manila? Do you live in the provinces? How does that all equate? Are you paying
Oh, the
taxes?
wage.
Yeah, are you paying taxes? Are you paying taxes? Are you supposed to be paying taxes? Right?
Mm,
Will that be regulated at some point? And then all the VAs want to talk about regulation, right?
yeah.
From all the Reddits, there has to be some sort of regulated industry, something to regulate the agencies, regulate the clients coming in, regulate our wages. Are you okay with regulating taxes? Right?
Mm,
All of the above is now going to be open and on the table. I don't have answers for all of this. I'm really looking forward to speaking with more people. I know you're going to be talking to a
mm-hmm,
lot of
mm-hmm.
VAs on your side. I'm going to be talking to a lot of clients, different agency owners. I plan to talk to everybody on the US and foreign client side of this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think between the conversations you and I are going to be having, the conversations that the other co-hosts are going to be having, we're going to open up a lot of Pandora's box here and open up a lot of debates.
Oh
But I
boy.
think it's going to be
Yeah.
healthy. I think it's going to
Yeah,
lead down the
yeah,
right path. So, you know,
definitely.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the conversations you're going to be having with these VAs. I want to learn more.
Definitely. I also loved what you mentioned about like bringing on different people to
Yeah,
discuss some of the topics you mentioned, because sometimes it's not enough to hear from VAs and agencies and clients. You kind of have to hear from the experts, especially on
yeah,
matters like taxes,
right.
especially matters on like intellectual property rights, which I know we've talked about a bit.
Yep,
And just like a quick addition to that, we also have this segment called the Reddit Rundown. It's
yep,
kind of like this, just Paulo and I, but this time we're gonna go through some of the Reddit posts we find really interesting and just like discuss the actual context of it, because like so
yep,
many of these issues you just can't talk like as a general topic, right? So
yep.
yeah, I'm so excited to see how our future episodes will roll out and like see where this takes us. So this was the Offshore Diaries. See you next episode. So that's all from my
Thanks,
end.
guys. See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.